My wife said our marriage wasn't working after we moved to her hometown because her friends convinced her there were better men out there. But now she regrets it after seeing the kind of men she finds. Should I take her back?
I'm here to ask for advice from the wise Reddit community about the situation happening in my life. I'm a 34-year-old man, married to my 32-year-old wife for 5 years. In total, we've been together for 8 years. I hope that information helps. We met in Chicago, where we both had our own things going on. She worked in sales, and I worked in software development. We had a very good life with a nice apartment, a group of friends, and everything reasonably settled. We were in a happy stage since we couldn't ask for more. But about 7 months ago, things started to change. My wife began talking more and more about her hometown in Minnesota. She grew up in a small, tight-knit community, and although we would visit her family a couple of times a year, it never seemed like she wanted to move there. But suddenly, it was all she talked about. At first, it was small things like, "I miss how simple life was back home," or, "It would be good to be closer to family now that my parents are getting older." Her parents are still in good health, but I understand. I didn't pay much attention to it because people get nostalgic about where they grew up, and I thought it was just a passing idea, not something she was really considering. But I could see how much it meant to her, so I began to take it more seriously. I love my wife and want her to be happy, so I started thinking about how to make this work for both of us. Her parents live in this small town, and I've always liked them, but I've always loved the energy and vibe of city life. That was a big part of why I loved living in Chicago. But in the end, we had many deep conversations about it. The more we talked, the more I could understand her, although it wasn't easy for me to imagine leaving everything behind. I won't deny that I wasn't a fan of this idea, mainly because I felt it was a huge change. I was afraid of leaving everything behind, but over time, I could see how much she needed it, and I couldn't ignore it. Plus, the logistics were manageable. My job offers hybrid work, so I only needed to be in the office a couple of times a month. That made the idea of moving much more realistic, though it didn't make the idea any easier. After months of back-and-forth discussion, I finally agreed to move. We packed everything up and moved to her hometown in Minnesota, and that's when things really started to get complicated. The move itself went well, no major problems. We found a nice house just 10 minutes away from her parents. It's not as nice as the apartment in Chicago, but it has a yard and more space overall. My wife was delighted. She dove headfirst into reconnecting with her family and old friends, spending almost every day with them. Meanwhile, I tried to adapt. I set up a home office and tried to find my place in this new community. It wasn't easy. I felt like an outsider in a town where it seems everyone has known each other forever. Last weekend, there was a local festival in town, something very important around here. My wife was excited because it meant she would see some of her best friends from high school. She hadn't seen them all together in years, and you could tell she was really looking forward to it. When we arrived, she introduced me to them. There were 3 of them, and they were polite enough, but I could still tell they didn't really like me. I can't explain it exactly, but the whole vibe was weird. Yesterday, my wife sat me down for what she called a conversation, which is what has turned my whole world upside down. She told me that her friends had opened her eyes about our marriage, and I have no idea how we got here so quickly. These are people I've met once, literally a brief introduction at a festival, and somehow, in that brief time, they've decided I'm not good enough for her. According to them, my wife settled for me when we lived in the city because she was afraid of being alone. They also said I don't fit in with their tight-knit community and that I'm not the type of man they always imagined she would be with. What really hurts is that instead of defending me or rejecting what they said, my wife told me she's been reflecting on it, and maybe they're right. Apparently, their comments made her start thinking about things she had been ignoring in our relationship, and I don't know how long she's been building up these ideas. She started listing problems that had never been problems before, that I'm too focused on work, even though it's my job that's supporting both of us while she's between jobs, that I don't try hard enough to fit in with her friends, that I've been here for a while and barely know anyone. And this one really hurt. We're different people now. After 8 years together, she tells me this, all because of a chat with friends she's reconnecting with after a long time. Right now, I'm sitting in my home office staring at the computer, writing this, which reads even more absurd than talking about it. I gave up so much to make this move. I left my friends behind to support her, and I left the city I loved, Chicago, just so she could be closer to her family. And now she's questioning whether she wants to be with me. It feels like I've been played a cruel joke. What hurts the most is that I feel completely blindsided. How does someone go from being happy in a marriage to questioning everything just because some old friend said a few things in a conversation? I told her I needed time to think. I really do need it, but right now, I don't even know what to think. Did I make a huge mistake moving here? Was our marriage not as strong as I thought? And if she's so easily influenced by her friends, what does that say about us? About me? This is where all of you come in. Has anyone gone through something like this? And if you have any advice on what to do next, I would appreciate it. Update 1. I came here for advice, and that's what I got, so thank you so much for that. You don't know how much I value something like this. I'm practically alone here, so I don't have friends or someone to talk this through with in person. My decision was to sit down with my wife last night for another conversation. I was hoping we could talk and maybe find some common ground. Unfortunately, she didn't feel the same way. I told her how hurt I was that she let her friends influence her view of our marriage so quickly and easily. I told her I felt betrayed, especially after giving up so much to move here. At first, she just listened without saying much, but then she got defensive. That's when she spilled more details about what her friends have been saying behind my back. Her friends have been pushing the idea that real Minnesota men are somehow better than me. They've painted the picture of the perfect small-town man. Outdoor activities lover, social, involved in all possible community activities, hunting, fishing, coaching little leagues, whatever. These are the characteristics they seem to think are the ideal of what a man should be, especially for someone like my wife who is now back in her hometown. And then there's me. I'm a software developer. I enjoy video games, reading, and indoor rock climbing. Things that, until now, she's always known about me and never had problems with. In fact, I remember her admiring me for having these hobbies, calling me a man who takes care of himself. She's always had her own interests, too, and I never had a problem with that because we both know it's important to have a personal life and space apart from each other. But now, out of nowhere, I'm not good enough because I don't fit into this narrow, stereotypical mold that her friends have decided is right for her. It's not even her mold. It's one her friends have given her. When I tried to remind her that she never had a problem with the things I like, that she always accepted me just as I am, her response made things even worse. She told me that moving back home made her realize what she's been missing. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she went on to suggest that maybe I should try changing my hobbies and interests to better fit in with the people here. That's when I really lost my cool. I told her right then that I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not, just to satisfy her friends. I wasn't married to them. It's one thing to ask for compromise in a relationship, but it's a whole different thing to tell me to change who I am to fit into a mold that a third party has mentioned. That's not me, and I shouldn't have to change for anyone, not even for her, and certainly not for her friends. Naturally, that conversation didn't go anywhere productive. She said she needed space to think and decided to stay at her parents' house for a few days. I agreed to give her the space she asked for, although at this point, I don't know how much she has to think about. Part of me is devastated that we've reached this point. Everything is falling apart, and just because her friends have brainwashed her, or not even that, because I don't think they've had time to do it. She just listened to them and is determined to throw everything away if I don't change. I have to tell you that part of me is furious that she's letting the opinions of people who barely know me dictate how she feels about me and our marriage. It's one thing to listen to your friends, but to let them guide your relationship like this? I can't understand it. I just don't understand how something so important, our relationship, can be so influenced by a group of people who barely know me and who certainly don't have my best interests in mind. Meanwhile, I've been doing the best I can to take care of myself, My family, especially my siblings, have been great about checking in on me. They believe there's still hope, that maybe this isn't the end, though I'm not so convinced. Still, I thank them because without them, I'm not sure I could think clearly. I'm still open to the possibility that she'll come to her senses, that she'll realize what she's doing is absurd, and at least ask me for forgiveness. But since we're being honest here, my faith in our relationship is starting to waver. It's hard to keep faith in a relationship that doesn't seem worth it. If it can waver so easily because of what other people have said, then I don't know if I should have faith at all. Update 2. The few days my wife said she would be at her parents' house have extended to more than a week, and this only helps to make things worse. She barely communicates with me, and when she does, they're short, distant messages. We're not having real conversations or discussions about where we stand. There's no effort to resolve things. It's as if emotionally she's no longer here, and I'm up in the air. Meanwhile, it seems her friends are taking advantage of this distance. Apparently, they've been organizing girls' nights out and, surprisingly, introducing her to single men from their social circle. Yes, you read that right. She's still staying at her parents' house, but she's going out with her friends and meeting other men. I wouldn't have even found out about this if one of her cousins hadn't reached out to warn me. At least, not all the women in this town are as bad as her. This cousin and I have always gotten along well, and she told me she felt I deserved to know what was happening behind my back. According to her, this group of friends has a history of causing problems in other people's marriages. It's like they see themselves as an exclusive town group with very strict ideas about who fits into their circle. My wife's cousin even told me they've done this before, convincing their married friends that their partners weren't good enough and encouraging them that there are better fish in the sea. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, one thing is having opinions about someone's relationship, but actively trying to destroy it? That's a completely different level of evil that seems straight out of a horror movie. The more I think about it, the more I realize that these friends have probably been sowing doubts in my wife's mind since we moved here. What really hurts is that she's allowing it. This is not the woman I thought I married. The woman I married was strong, independent, and loyal to her decisions. Now she's acting as if she's being influenced by parasites lodging in her brain. I can't keep waiting in the hope that things will get better. I've scheduled a consultation with a divorce lawyer for next week. I never thought I would have to take that step, but I need to protect myself if things keep getting worse. Plus, I've started looking for apartments in Chicago. I plan to return to the city I love. I left the city because I loved my wife more, but now I don't see the point in continuing to do so. My company has been amazing through all of this. They've offered me a full-time position at the office again whenever I'm ready to return. With this, it will be much easier to return to Chicago if I finally leave everything behind. It hasn't been long since I moved here, but if there's nothing tying me to this town, I don't think it will be very difficult for me to go through another move. Update 3. After meeting with a divorce lawyer and taking some time to think things through, I didn't want to make a hasty decision. I realized it was time to take the next step and start prioritizing myself. I sent my wife an email formally outlining my intention to file for divorce. During all this time, she never showed interest in salvaging the relationship, and I can't be sure she hasn't cheated on me during those dating nights. I thought that was what she wanted since she was actively looking for ways to replace me instead of fighting for the marriage. So what happened after I sent that email left me very surprised. She called me a few hours after receiving the email, absolutely crying. Through tears, she admitted she had made a huge mistake. She was admitting that her friends had manipulated her, sowing doubts in her mind. They convinced her to take time to reevaluate our marriage and have girls' nights out. She admitted she felt torn between her judgment and the life we had built together, and in the end, she chose wrong. I asked her about the men they had been introducing her to, and she took a few seconds to respond because she wasn't expecting me to know all that. She thought that since I always spent time at home and didn't interact with anyone, I wouldn't find out. But she didn't count on her cousin telling me. Finally, she found words to respond and told me nothing had happened. They were just men her friends invited, and nothing had happened. I don't know if that was true, but I was going to tell her my truth. I told her I appreciated her honesty and was glad she could see the damage her decisions had caused, but my decision was final. I can't keep putting myself in a position where I have to fight for respect in my own marriage. She was begging me to reconsider, crying even more, but at that point, nothing was going to change. I told her I had waited long enough, several weeks, for her to come to her senses, but now I wasn't going to prioritize anyone but myself. Don't think this was all easy for me, but at that moment, I believed it was the best option for me. At another time, I would have thought about what was best for both of us, as I did with this move, but now there was no reason to keep doing so. Now I'm officially preparing for my return to Chicago, with my job waiting for me there. It feels like a lifeline thrown to me after falling into a frozen lake in Minnesota. Some of my old co-workers have even offered to help me find an apartment and get settled. The only consolation from all of this is that I'll be able to return to Chicago, where my friends, family, and my life are, and I return with a new lesson learned. Not to leave my life behind for another person, because when that person gets bored with you, they abandon you like a dog they no longer want. I've begun the process of packing my things, resolving all the logistics of the move, and slowly saying goodbye to this chapter of my life. There are days when I'm still angry, still hurt, but at the same time, I hadn't even realized how suffocated I had been for so long. If there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's that love alone is not enough to sustain a marriage. Of course, love is important, but trust, respect, and loyalty are equally crucial. Perhaps even more so. And if you're honest with yourself, you can't stay in a relationship where you're treated as if you're not enough, no matter how much love there is. It's hard to admit, but it's the truth. Starting over at 34 is scary, no doubt. I'd be lying if I said I'm not scared about what the future holds for me. But you know what's scarier? Staying in this situation. That kind of life is not sustainable. The divorce process is officially underway. I'm grateful that it should be relatively straightforward since we don't have children, and most of our finances are separate. I've been working closely with my lawyer to ensure everything is handled fairly and as quickly as possible. At this point, I'm ready to sign the papers and start rebuilding from scratch. I'm not in a rush, but I'm definitely looking forward to it being over. Interestingly, one of the most unexpected sources of support throughout all of this has been my wife's cousin. She's been really kind, and it's been good to have someone in the family who supports me. She even apologized for not warning me earlier about how toxic my wife's friends were. I've been talking a bit more with her, and at least she's assured me that my wife hasn't been unfaithful, though it's not something she can prove 100%. Anyway, it's not like it matters at this point. Part of the divorce arrangement is that I won't pay any spousal support, and that's all that matters to me right now. Finishing this. I'm very grateful to my wife's cousin because not only has she helped me with all of this and been a source of support, but she's also transformed into a kind of friend I have in this town. She's made me feel less alone while going through the whole process. That's why I've invited her to visit Chicago. She's never traveled outside the state and isn't one of those girls who want to have a life here and meet a man from here. So I told her that if she ever travels, I'll show her my favorite places and restaurants. It's the least I can do for her after she's been my lifeline. I don't know if I'll have another update, but if I do, it will surely be when I'm living in Chicago again. Update 4. I'm writing this from Chicago, and you don't know how good it feels to say that. I'm in my new apartment and have completely returned to my old routine, going out with friends, eating at restaurants I like, and back in the office. The divorce isn't finalized yet, but I don't think it will be long before everything is over. My wife agrees with the terms, so there's just a bit of bureaucracy left. I know that in these 2 months she has started dating someone, which could explain why she hasn't decided to fight the divorce or seek reconciliation, which is honestly a benefit for me. That she's with someone else at this moment doesn't matter to me too much. It just makes me think I made the right decision. She wanted to be with someone from her town, and that's what she got. I just wanted to get my life back after she listened to her friends and probably cheated on me. For those asking about my wife's cousin, whom I'll call Greta to avoid repeating my wife's cousin all the time, I have things to tell you. She was in Chicago 2 weeks ago and stayed for a week. It was enough time to see the city in broad strokes, though we both agreed it wasn't enough. We did everything from visiting museums to trying the famous Chicago-style pizza. I know some prefer New York's, but we're not going to agree on that because I like the one here better. Greta does too, which is why we get along so well. Greta liked the city so much that she's making plans to move here. She has to find a job, but I don't think it will be difficult because she attended university in Minnesota, which opens up a range of possibilities. This is also good news for me because I'm not going to deny it. We've developed a kind of connection. I don't know where this will take us, but we've decided to give it a try once she moves here. She knows very well that I won't return to her town for all the gold in the world, and knowing that she also wants to escape from there because she hates how people are in that place makes me feel even more attracted to her. Maybe I'll come back with another update to tell you how things have gone with Greta, but I don't update this subreddit very often, so it will probably take time. Update 5. I know I said I would come back to tell you about Greta, but I also have other things to share, so this will be an update with a bit of everything. Greta moved here a month ago with a job and an apartment. She's just as happy to be able to live here as I am, which doesn't surprise me because Chicago has something magical about it. But don't worry, I won't just talk about the city. She didn't move in with me because we wanted to first try how we felt together, and that's what we've been doing since she arrived. I helped her with the move, and we went to dinner that same night, which we could consider our first official date. Since then, we've been sleeping at each other's apartments a few nights a week, so you could say things are going well. I can't help but laugh because I went to that town with a wife, and now I've returned with a girlfriend. And it's even funnier because I would never have imagined having a relationship with a woman who comes from that place, especially with what my ex-wife's friends represented. But I was lucky enough to find the only woman from there who enjoys living in a big city. That move wasn't entirely unproductive if you think about it. My divorce has been finalized, so I can call her my ex-wife, and I don't have to have contact with her again. Just in time, because she might be considering returning, now that some things have happened in her town. And when I say returning, I mean to Chicago and possibly to our relationship. That's what happens in a small town where everyone knows everything, and even Greta has found out, something that in a big city would be unthinkable. It turns out that my ex's boyfriend, the man who supposedly had everything her friends wanted for her, also had what one of her friends wanted. I need to explain it. What happened is already understood, right? I'm going to assume yes and continue with what I have to tell you. Now my ex is the cuckold of the town, and her friend is no longer her friend because now she's her ex-boyfriend's girlfriend. That's why I think she might be thinking of returning, as her beloved town is perhaps no longer so interesting. Still, in the 2 months since everything blew up, I haven't heard from her, and I hope not to. I don't think she knows what I have with Greta now, and I hope she doesn't find out because I don't want any more drama. Update 6. Remember when I told you that Greta and I spent time at each other's apartments, though technically I'm at hers more than she's at mine? I don't know. Maybe it's time to move in together after several months like this. This is important for the rest of the update. One day, I opened the door to Greta's house where I had stayed overnight and found my ex standing there with some suitcases. Still, I was more surprised than she was. Not that she wasn't, but that day I was having breakfast and wasn't expecting to see her again. The conversation was awkward, to say the least, but finally, she left. She knew Greta had moved to Chicago, but didn't know I was having something with her. Greta wasn't her first choice, but since there was an important event in the city that weekend, there weren't many hotel rooms available, and she thought her cousin might help her with a place to stay for a couple of nights. My ex-wife's reaction wasn't as friendly as I'm telling it. It's not that she left without saying a thing or two, but to be honest, it's not like we care. I didn't even start my relationship with Greta before the divorce, something my ex can't say, and in the worst case, if she wanted a man from her town, it was also fair that I have a woman from hers, don't you think? Telling her that wasn't my brightest idea, and Greta reminded me of that after her cousin left. Anyway, Greta told her she couldn't stay there because it would be awkward, And I think my ex-wife, after finding out about what was between Greta and me, thought the same thing. Would she have tried to go to my apartment if I hadn't been at Greta's house? I don't think so, because she doesn't have the address. Anyway, if it was her second stop, I'm sure she ruled it out. The only thing we know about her is that she stayed in the city. That was 2 nights ago, and we haven't heard anything from her since. She probably found a very expensive hotel to spend the night, of those that are usually available. Edit. I know my ex-wife is living in the city. I know from mutual friends. Still, she's left us alone and hasn't become a crazy ex.